Hello everyone, welcome back to Conscious Quilting. Today we're going to be talking about setting up your machine for free motion quilting. The basic of basics. I want to try to help you guys get prepared for doing free motion quilting and doing the best job that you can possibly do by being prepared properly. And we're going to get started right now. So, whether you are quilting on a mechanical machine or an electronic machine, computerized machine, doesn't matter. The basics are the same any way you slice it. And there's several major factors that go into free motion quilting. When we talk about free motion quilting, we are dropping the feed dogs on our sewing machine, and most sewing machines will do that. Whether it's computerized, electronic, or strictly mechanical, there should be some way to drop the feed dogs on your sewing machine. Now, on the sewing machine that we're doing today, this is a strictly mechanical machine. Remove this. So, on this machine, the switch for the feed dogs is right here. And this drops the feed dogs, makes them completely inactive. That is very, very important. For those of you who don't know what feed dogs are, right here, this set of teeth that comes up, this is what advances the fabric on your sewing machine. And in free motion, we want those inactive because your hands are what are going to advance your fabric, not the feed dog. So we're going to drop those, get them out of the way. Now, when you drop feed dogs on most sewing machines, you need to make a slight adjustment to the upper tension to balance it out. For some reason, dropping the feed dogs throws off that upper tension a bit. And on some machines, it throws it off a lot. On some machines, it's just a little bit. And on some machines, it doesn't change at all. On this particular machine, I usually do not find it necessary to adjust the tension. But on most of the machines that I have quilted on over the last 18 years, I have found it necessary to do so. Default tension across the board on most sewing machines, there are exceptions to this, but default tension, particularly on mechanical machines, is 4. And in the case of most mechanical machines, I would go from a 4 to a 5. On a computerized or electronic machine, specifically the ones that have electronic tension, I would actually take it up to 5.2 to 5.4, maybe even higher, depending on the thread that I'm using to quilt. It's going to depend largely on the thickness of your thread, how much of an adjustment you're going to need to make. So if you have a 30 weight thread, which is a thicker quilting thread, then that is going to not require as much of an adjustment as if you were doing a 50 weight quilting thread, such as Aurifil. That's a judgment call. You're going to have to experiment with your different threads to see where you need to set the tension. But you have to make sure that you've threaded your machine properly. That's very important. I see it all the time where people think they have a tension issue and actually it's a threading issue. So check that first. And you always, always, always want to do test quilting to check your tension before you get onto your actual quilting project. I almost always have some sort of a quilt sandwich nearby that I can just play with that's just a throwaway so I can test my tension. I do it every single time I sit down to quilt. Now, if we've dropped our feed dogs and we've raised our tension and we've gotten that balanced out, next we need to look at other equipment. So, I have here an extension table that fits around the free arm of my sewing machine. Some sewing machines come with an extension table, some do not. You can always get one no matter what machine you have. Even if it's 100 years old, you can get an extension table for your machine. There are companies that custom make them for every body type and every model of sewing machine that exists. So you can absolutely find one, and I really feel like it's a must-have for free motion quilting. It gives you support to the left of your sewing machine. Now, of course, if you have a sewing cabinet into which your sewing machine will, drop down, and you have a flush setup for your sewing machine, then you wouldn't need an extension table. But most of us don't have that. So an extension table is very, very handy. And even if you do have that, an extension table is a good thing to have if you go to classes, especially, free motion classes. You need to have an extension table. So another piece of equipment I think is very, very useful: free motion quilting gloves. These are gloves that either are impregnated with some sort of rubbery substance or have little rubber dots on the fingertips. They help you to grip your fabric. Cotton fabric, of course, will suck the moisture out of your hands in no time, and then you don't have any grip. No grip, no control of your fabric. That is a problem. We need to be able to move our fabric freely. We need to be able to control the fabric if we want to do nice quilting. Needles. We want to use, most of the time, a 9014 quilting needle, okay? Every brand of needles has a quilting style needle, and those needles come in different sizes. I recommend a 9014 because it helps to prevent skipped stitches. We don't want skipped stitches in our quilting. Very important. So 9014 quilting needle is absolutely my recommendation, more or less regardless of what size thread you're doing, because it has more to do with the size of the scarf on the back of the needle. When you're doing multi-directional sewing, you're pulling the thread away from the hook of the machine, which if it misses, it won't be able to complete the stitch, and that's how you get a skip. If you have a larger scarf on your needle, i.e. a 9014 needle, then it's going to be a lot less likely that you're going to get a skip. So if you've got the right gloves, the right needle, the right extension table, you dropped your feed dogs, you balanced out your tension, you are in fact ready to quilt. Then comes the actual handling of your fabric, and that'll be our next part. Okay, so we're ready to actually quilt now. So let's take a look at how to start. I've got my quilt sandwich on my machine. Got my thread threaded. So the first thing I want to do, because I want a clean start on the back and on the front of my quilt, so I want to pull up my bobbin thread. I'm holding my top thread in my hand, turning my hand wheel towards me, and then I'm going to pull on my bobbin thread, and it comes right up. So if I pull this out, there's this little loop of bobbin thread that pops up, and then I can pull them both together, and I'm holding both of the threads in my left hand, and I'm just going to do a couple of stitches to lock the stitch so that my quilting will not come out. Now, piece of equipment I really should have mentioned earlier, your chair. I have a height adjustable chair that goes up to counter height. I really recommend this for free motion quilting, or to have a cushion or something you can sit on so that you can sit up higher than you normally would for sewing. It really does help with having control of your fabric. Now, I've got my gloves on, so I've got control, I've got grip. I'm going to try to keep my hands as flat as possible while moving my quilt, trying not to do things like this. This causes problems. Keep your hands flat, keep your fabric fairly taut without overstressing your hands or your arms. Self-care is very important in free motion quilting. And I'm going to go ahead and just do a simple little spiral here. And I'm going to stop. I'm going to go ahead and trim my tail. Got my scissors as close to my quilt top as possible. And on the front and on the back, this is fairly clean. When you're using a strong contrasting thread, things like that will show a lot more. If you're using a matching thread, they'll pretty much disappear. Now, I see a lot of people in my classes trying to creep along like this. That is a very bad idea because, and we're going to get into the technical parts of this a little bit. When you are creeping along, your needle's moving very slowly, you're going to be very prone to move your fabric too fast in relation to the speed of your needle. What is then going to happen is you're going to pull a long stitch, a long piece of thread, and because of the tension, that is going to cause the needle to slightly flex or bend while it is sewing. What can happen in that case is it can strike your bobbin case. The best case scenario if that happens is your needle breaks. And you just replace the needle and get on with life. However, it can damage your bobbin case, and that can be expensive, especially if you have to replace your bobbin case multiple times, and we don't want to do that. So, you want to have the speed of your needle going at a fairly decent clip, like such. So that you can move your fabric freely. If you feel resistance from the needle against your fabric, your needle's going too slow for how quickly you're moving your fabric. And if you're creeping along with your fabric, you're still not going to get really smooth lines, smooth quilting lines. And we want smooth quilting lines, okay? Even if you're simply doing a simple meander, such as this, you still want to have that needle going at a good clip, and you want to be moving your fabric at a decent relative speed, not creeping along with either the needle or the fabric. As you get used to taking control of the movement of your fabric on your machine, because you're used to the machine doing it for you, you will gain confidence in the movement of that fabric. Your goal should be moving the fabric smoothly and not in a herky-jerky fashion, okay? We don't want to be doing this. We want nice, smooth, gentle movement. Think of watching a Tai Chi video or a yoga flow. You want that kind of nice, meditative movement. And from there, it is just a matter of practice. Now, every time you're trying to learn a new stitch, you will have to practice it, and the first steps will falter. I've been quilting for 18 years, and every time I try to learn something new, it takes me a few tries before I get it. Even though I've been a quilting educator for almost a decade, you know, it still takes practice when you're doing a new stitch. So don't be unkind to yourself. Give yourself the leeway to not be perfect. It doesn't have to be perfect. It's quilting. Now, you can, of course, quilt larger, go in a larger space for a design. I tend to go in smaller spaces on my videos and on this machine because it has a very small throat. However, if you are quilting a larger space, you are better off flooring it with your machine. So I'm going to do a long line out here and try to keep my stitching even. I actually am going to turn this way because that's, for me, that's going to be easier for this. When you get to the point where your hands are past the needle, stop. Stop your needle and bring your hands back to the space in front of your needle. Do not do this. Don't do the Superman pose. That is not good for your back, your shoulders, or your neck, and it's not going to be good for your quilt either. Bring your hands back in front of your needle and continue. Now I'm going to just drop my needle a bit and turn. So I've got a long undulating line. My stitching's fairly even. Again, I've been doing this for a while. But it's fairly even because I ran this machine at full speed, this is not the fastest machine in the world, but I ran my machine at full speed and I moved my fabric quickly to cover that distance. What you'll find is if you're trying to do a large design, cover a big distance, you're gonna move your fabric quickly. It's just kind of instinct takes over. And because of that, you need to move your needle quickly. Now, on computerized machines and electronic machines, you probably have some sort of speed control on the body of the machine that will limit the maximum speed of your sewing machine. If that is the case, and you're just getting started with free motion or you're fairly new to it, I recommend setting that speed just a hair above medium so that even if you floor it, that's the fastest it's going to go, is just above medium. But then I want you to floor it because that's going to give you the smoothest motion on your machine. From there, again, we come back to practice. And you have to practice. Everything you do, you're going to need to practice doing your different stitches and practice just moving your fabric. Even if all you're doing is a simple stipple or meandering stitch, loop the loops, doesn't matter. Oh, that brings up another point. Some people seem to think that you're not allowed to cross threads in quilting. And I'm very certain that that came from the world of hand quilting and is probably very true in hand quilting. It is not true in machine quilting. You can cross your threads all day. I give you permission. Don't worry about it. So, all these threads are crossed and the world did not end. Cross threads, a big deal. Who cares? If that's your design, then that's your design. Don't worry about it. You will also notice here, I did pull some longer stitches on that. I wasn't going quite as fast as maybe I should have with my needle. See, we all need practice, so that's okay. I think that covers the basics of what you need to know. Just thought of something else. Stitch length. On most of your machines, you are not going to need to worry about stitch length. You are in control of stitch length because you are moving your fabric in relation to the speed of your needle. That is what sets your stitch length. And it is only through practice that you will become consistent with that. It is not the thing that you should be worried about when you're just starting out. The thing you should focus on is smoothly moving your fabric. If you can get to a point where you're moving your fabric smoothly, the stitches will balance out eventually. But you gotta breathe, you gotta relax, you gotta let it flow. You cannot approach your quilting with a bunch of anxiety and dread in your heart. It's not gonna work for you. And I know a lot of you do this. You need to approach it as a flow and as a chance to just center yourself and meditate and be with the fabric and the thread and just play and not worry about it being perfect. The world isn't perfect. I'm certainly not. And, I see people every day that they obsess over the perfection of their stitches and the perfection of their sewing and the perfection of their quilting and the perfection of everything. I have yet to see a perfect thing in this world. And I have yet to meet a perfect person or be in a perfect place. And I've been here a while. So you just have to practice and you just have to play and give yourself permission to screw up. It's okay. The world will keep turning, I promise. I think that pretty much covers what I wanted to talk about today. I hope it is helpful. If you have other questions that I did not address, please put it in the comments. I will respond. Thank you very much. Have a great day.